Hello and welcome to Turning Point Tactics, the competitive Kill Team 40k podcast and YouTube channel focused on giving you the strategies and tactics to seize initiative every turning point. I'm your host Ryan and I'm here to give you the tips and tricks to elevate every part of your Kill Team experience. If you enjoy this content and you want more, you can join our Patreon for as little as £3 a month. We'll get access to our Discord, Patreon priority questions, early access to videos including Kill Team bat reps, faction guides and much more. If that's not for you, you can support just by hitting like, subscribe and sharing these videos amongst the community of Kill Team enthusiasts local to you. With all that said, let's get into it.
Okay, so the first thing you can see in terms of painting these guys, I wouldn't say this is what I'm going to be showing is a really quick method or something that's kind of going to help you speed painting. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to be doing on this you can kind of do in a speed painting way, and I'll kind of tell you that as we're going along. But it's kind of like a paint for pleasure kind of method, really, kind of like putting your time into the things that are most fun, or at least what I find fun. But obviously, you know, it will depend on what you enjoy. It depends on how you like painting. So you might really like painting this way, you might not, but I'll show you kind of like how to get the result. But it's also not kind of going to be the most time consuming way either. So it's going to be kind of like a bit of a middle ground between kind of like a time consuming paint job that's going to kind of try to make it a bit of a higher quality, but also something that, you know, you're still, at least you're going to get them done in a good week or so. So if you kind of see how I start things off, the way I prioritize starting these things off is I want to try and get as much of the hard work done as possible with an airbrush beforehand. I've already had these done before. We were thinking about kind of showing how this was done on the channel, so I wish I could have showed you this step, but it's relatively easy. Basically, the whole thing first was just basically sprayed with a rattle can black. So we did that first just to make sure that we had those dark shadows. Then after we did that, the next thing I did is just from the top, I went and sprayed white from the top. So the whole thing was just sprayed white from the top down. After I did that, the next thing is I got a magenta, and that magenta colour was sprayed from below. So we kind of went around the model spraying magenta from kind of more of a downward angle. Okay, and you can see around where that's all happened. If I do that, you can see this is all a lot darker, and that was mainly because it was primed with magenta from below first. You can kind of see it on the claws for a lot of those areas like so. Because the white was done from above, you can see that this is darker, so wherever the magenta is going out, it's going to be a darker magenta. Then where the magenta is going on to the white, it's lighter as well. So you are already building in contrast by having the black and white, then you're having the dark magenta going up to the light magenta, and then you kind of want to mostly cover the model with magenta. You don't want to leave much white because you're wanting this to go orange, which I haven't done very well, to be honest. I think I could have been a bit braver and done more of it in magenta. If I did, I would have got a nicer orangey colour all over, so that's why I'm going to need to slightly fix it. But the more of a model you do with magenta, you've already got your dark contrast from dark to light. So to be honest, you just kind of like, you're really kind of looking to put your magenta on, and then you can put your thin down yellow ink or thin down yellow colour on top, and that'll basically mix to make your orange. So yeah, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start on a Carapace and basically try and make that a really nice rich orange. So to make this a richer orange, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this red ink from scale 75. It's one of the artist colour range rather than one of their, I can't remember what their inks are called. It's something like a, whatever they are, they're in the kind of like smaller pots, but this is an artist set of inks. I find these pretty good because they're pretty matte for inks, and yeah, they just seem to be really nice punchy colours. I know you might be thinking, why are you using a red ink? Well, this is a very warm red ink, so when we use this, it's going to look very orangey, and with it being so see-through, when we put it onto this, this was by trial and error, to be honest, but just by using this, it came out very nice and orange, and so that's what we're going to use. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm basically glazing into the shadows. So I want to make it even darker. So I'm putting the ink down, and the whole point of this is I'm using my wet palette to essentially just thin out the ink. So you can see I'm straight away glazing. And again, this is painting for pleasure. So this method is going to be, for me, I love glazing. I think glazing is far more pleasurable to do than layering, because you see more of an effect. You get more of a kind of sense of contrast when you're doing it. So straight away you're getting pleasure from painting, which is why kind of like, you know, I'm painting this way. Other people may differ, but I think it's a really nice way to paint. So I'm thinning out this ink. Now you can see by doing that, I'm trying to make it nice and see-through. And I'm using my wet palette to essentially drag out and get this 2V consistency I want. Now when I've done that, what I'm doing is I'm getting my model, and I'm going to start dragging this into my shadows. So you can see I'm going to drag it wherever I want it to be a stronger orange. So I'm going to drag kind of down from my highlights, and I'm dragging to where I want it to be strongest. The reason I'm doing it that way is because I want it to seem to basically the paint to collect where I want it darkest. So what you can see when we're doing this, what we're trying to do is go away from the light and have it collect wherever we want it to be far darker. And the reason that's happening is because when you're dragging away, wherever you take your brush off, so for example, if I do this, and I'm going to go from here, I'm going to go down, okay, and I'm going to put my brush off. What's happening is you're dragging a clump of paint down, and when you take your brush off, that clump of paint is going to be partially left in that area. So you're going to have a far higher density of paint left at the end where you paint to where you started. This is kind of like this was one of those moments where when I was painting, it's massively changed the way I paint, because I used to paint into the areas which were lighter, and then it used to be really difficult to control, where by doing this, it really kind of like helps you control what is light and what is dark. So you want to drag away down or away from the lighter areas towards the bits you want darker. By having the paint this thin, and you can see hopefully already that I know this is red ink, but look how orange it looks thin down on top of yellow. It just immediately looks like a really nice orangey colour. And I am just basically using this to very easily control and work into areas where I want this to look even more orange and even more punchy and even more contrasty. Now, like I said, I'm painting for pleasure, not time. So when I'm doing this is going to take quite a long time. But the reason I really like it is because it's super controllable. I know you'll get a really good quality outcome. It looks really nice, and I think you can get so much contrast there. You can get really, really good quality result, and you can do this in tiers. So you see these areas, we're going to be able to add loads and loads and loads of contrast to that. So it's going to look ace, it's going to look really, really nice. And it will take a while. But the thing is, actually, it's quite easy to do. So in terms of ease, it's just the difficult part is it just takes a bit of a while. So it just takes a bit of time layering stuff up. It's not a magic fix that happens straight away, but it is something where if you just keep working into it, if you want it to be darker, what do? Well, you just go into it again. And because the layers you're working with are so ultra thin, the nice thing about that is that you basically you're controlling it in very, very small steps. So if you go wrong, well, it's no biggie. Like, you've just done a tiny bit of a filter in one area. It's just a slight bit darker. So, you know, it's really, I think it's really accessible. You know, you don't have to worry too much about, you know, your brush going in the wrong place, or putting the wrong, you know, amount down, or getting your light placement wrong, or even just like, you know, if you're watching me here and I just suddenly go, oops, something like that, you know, it barely makes a difference. If you've gone wrong, you can get a bit of water, just drag it out. So I'm just going to use some water to move it. If it's not dark enough, one thing I would say is you've got to leave it to dry. So you can see here, I'm letting it dry before I start messing with it again. You want it to be completely dry. because if you mess with it halfway through, this is the one thing about glazing that's kind of like, I would say, difficulty level wise, you need to make sure you do properly. You don't want to be putting down a glaze like this, having it starting to dry and then messing it up, because if you do that, what will start to happen is your layer that you've got drying, that layer will then be partially dry and you'll scrape it off and it will go textured. So you don't really want to do that. You want to be doing a nice thin layer like I am here, putting that down there in a nice little thin amount, and as you've done that, you then leave it. You just leave it, you let it do its thing, you let it dry. It's a nice thin layer, so you just kind of work in increments, and you can just, you know, take a chill, listen to an audiobook, and just keep adding contrast to your piece. Now, what I would say is, if you don't want to glaze, one thing you can do is literally just wash it. So if I was going to get this, you could just get a paint, and by all means, like if you wanted to, and I'll do it on some of these lower areas, you could just get your paint and flood it like so. So you can, if you want to, just use a contrast and then you can flood it. You can see the difference though of what this is going to lead you to, where from glazing, look at this top bit. So you might not be able to see properly, but on here I can kind of really target it, and I can make this side darker, and I can drag it to this side, and I can start to make this side of the scale seem that darker. I can also move it up to there. These ones I can kind of like keep them a little bit cleaner, or I can just kind of work again just into the actual folds of these with a very targeted bit of brushwork. Where if you're just going to be using washes, can you see how that wash is just basically, it's just covered that whole thing. It's just all gone, you know, it's using the airbrush kind of like to, it will have a little bit of contrast, but it's gonna largely be the same kind of thing, where you're going to be able to control so much more where is light and where is dark by using some glazing instead. So yeah, you can use contrast paints to this and it will work, you will get a good result, it will look nice, but using something like glazing like this, it just looks, it's just that little bit of time I think makes a huge difference. And again, like if you just keep contrasting, you know that basically it's going to turn almost one color. Like you're not going to get a massive range of contrast by using contrast. I know it's called contrast, but if you just keep going over and over and over with contrast, it's going to just turn a very, very solid color. But what we're going to do is we're just going to keep doing this. So every single time I've finished on a bit, I'm going to leave it a little bit, and I'm going to go back into it, and I'm going to keep bringing contrast and keep bringing contrast and keep doing it, and I'm going to do it until I feel like the darks are really, really nice and dark. I'm going to leave the lights, and we're going to create, by doing that, a super, super, super contrasty bit of Carapace. Last tip I'd say, you've got to be really careful when we're going to be going a bit darker now, but you've got to be really careful when you're pooling. So when you're working, try not to leave pools. Like, you want your glaze to be a paintable, thin layer like paint, not a wash, especially with inks. Now the reason I say this is because, let's say if you try to pool, you know, like when you have your coffee and you leave a coffee in the middle, you'll get a very clear watermark coffee, a coffee stain. So you need to be really careful that you don't kind of like pool it almost like so, because if you do that, that big chunk is going to kind of like dry around the edges a lot darker than it will in the center. So you want to be making sure that you're not leaving it like a watery bunch. You want to be making sure that when you're painting, that you're painting a thin layer of watery paint on it. You're not leaving a layer of kind of just like a bunch of water there to pool, and then it's not a wash. You do not want it like a wash. You're making it into a thin glaze. You're not making it like a wash. Probably a better tip I should have probably said earlier. Yeah, if I can kind of put that earlier in the tutorial, then I'll say, but you want it to, you can even see here, because I haven't kind of like thinned that out enough, that's starting to be a bit clearer. You can fix this stuff, but like I said, just get some water. You can see me here just getting some water. So if I can show you now, I'm just trying to get water and thin my brush out, and then trying to get almost everything off my brush. So my brush is basically like a very, very damp, but kind of like there's hardly anything on it except it just being a damp brush. And then what I'm just trying to do is just paint away and paint out so that is now that lovely thin layer, because that's how you want it. You don't want to be pooling water down. You want to be painting a thin layer of paint, a very thin layer of paint, so it can just leave it. Now hopefully you can see there we've got loads more contrast. It might not show as well, but you can see in comparison to this one here, where this one is looking very kind of like, you know, flat, in comparison to this one now has so much more contrast, and we've painted so much more orange into there. It's definitely more orangey. I'm probably going to take it a little bit further, and I'll show you it when it's done. But yeah, we're trying to, on this model at the moment, you can see we're painting a lot of orange into that, so we've got a lot of contrast from the yellow to the orange. Right, so you can see the difference that we've made there, and kind of like what we've done. You know, you could, by all means, you could take that further than that, and you know, I just can't bother anymore. But you could take it further than that. But you know, as long as it's making kind of a difference in terms of from a distance, and you can see a nice bit of contrast difference, that's what you're going for. And you can really see here how much that has done to the carapace. Obviously we've done nothing else yet, but that's made a massive difference to how that carapace looks. And I would say, like, from that point now, we're going to work into the highlighting area. Again, I'll talk about why in a second, but you know, it's just, I think it just makes such a nice, massive difference that's so perceptible from a distance. When you're looking down onto a table, like, you can really see some lots and lots of different light play, lots of different colours, and it's really nice and rich as well because of the ink. So a really big difference there that we've made just with to a large amount of the model as well. Like, look how much of the model that we've done with that. Now by all means you can leave it like that if you want to. I'm not going to, but you could leave it if you wanted to, but we're going to talk about the next things we're going to do just in the next part. So for this next bit, we're going to do some highlighting, and what I've added to my palette, you can see there, we've got a bit of orange, we've got some yellow, we've got some white. We're going to use this primary yellow just because I love using, so it's not this stuff. I was going to use something else, but then I binned it. So I just love using these kind of like high body tubes. I just like how they are on a palette. I like how you can thin them down. I just like how they use. I think they can. They're really nice and smooth. They don't cover as well as you think they will, so it's not for coverage that I'm using them, but it is more about just, I love the vibrant colours that you get from them. I love how you can thin them down, and yeah, I think they're really good to use. I'm going to use this orange from scale 75 artist arranging a tube, and I'm going to use AK's white, just again because I had it by weight. I don't really care which white I'm going to use, but we're just going to use one. And the reason I am still going to use some of this ink, because this ink is what we use to get this colour, I am still going to use it. But the thing is, if you just, let's say, mixed your highlights from that ink, you'll find that, yeah, it's really nice and thin, but just because it's so shiny, it's quite hard to work with, because you won't be able to perceive how your highlight is going. So I'm going to just kind of mix a tiny bit of that with some of these paints as well. So I'm going to mix my highlight, my first highlight, by mixing some of that. I'm going to get some of my yellow and start to mix my colour from this. And I'm just going to mix a colour that I feel is a nice first step from that point. I'm going to try and not use too much white here because I don't want to desaturate it too much. But I do want to make sure that I'm not making the highlight too yellow. I do want to keep it relatively orange. So I do want to make sure that I'm using some white, not just loads of yellow, because otherwise what's going to happen is you're just going to see that it's going to get, really yellowy, and I don't really want it to take over, the yellow to take over, but we are going to have it go in a bit of a yellow direction. So you can see I'm just mixing my colours, seeing which, and just judging it by eye, looking at my model. I'm trying to look at my lighter colours on there and see which might be a good step. Now, if I'm honest, this first highlight probably isn't going to make that much of a difference to the lighter areas of the carapace. But the thing is, it will make a difference to the lower areas. And so you don't want to start with kind of like a really light highlight, which is going to essentially affect all of that glazing, because if you do that, what you're basically going to find is it's going to be too light for these lower areas. So we're going to start with a slightly lower colour. Now look, you might not want to do this because it's just lots and lots of edge highlighting, but I just think it's a really enjoyable part of painting. I think edge highlighting is really fun when you're painting. This is the kind of bits you want to do. So you can see, in terms of me, I love glazing, I love edge highlighting. So I've got a method where the first thing I've done is I've done a load of work on the model, and I get to straight away glaze, and now I get to highlight, and then I might do a little bit of kind of like black lining. Now for me, that's a lovely painting process for joy. That's just what I want to do. That's lots and lots of detail. I am painting this way because that's the areas that I want to get to. So you can see that's why I'm painting it this way. It's not because it's the quickest way, it's not because it's the best way, it's because that lets me do the things I enjoy. So when you're painting your models, I mean, you can't just look at tutorials and see how people are doing what they're doing, because it just might not make any sense to you whatsoever. Because if you don't like it, why are you doing it? Why are you painting that way? Now, by all means, you might not like painting at all. And if you don't like painting at all, you're probably first watching the wrong bit, but also, there are methods for just doing stuff quickly. And but that's not what we're talking about here. But if you're painting for enjoyment, then you can really, you just want to be trying lots and finding your own way. So watching what other people do and seeing how they approach stuff lets you try stuff, but really you should be painting a way that just prioritizes you doing the stuff you like as much as possible. If you like dry brushing, you want to have methods that let you dry brush loads. If you like doing washes, you want to do methods that will let you absolutely get the most out of washes, so you can see the washes do loads to your model, which these would be great for, by the way. If you like doing lots of highlighting, you want to basically be getting I hate layering. I absolutely hate layering with a burning passion. I would rather do anything than doing base layering. Anything, absolutely anything. I just hate putting kind of like base layers down just so I can actually paint on top of them. So you can see I've almost, with this Carapace, fully avoided that. I am going to have to do it for the skin, because as much as I hate layering, I also hate masking. I can't, that seems so procedural to me. I hate it so much. So I could have masked maybe the skin, or try to be really careful with a bit of a skin base layer, something like so. Or I could have just let it overspray a bit like Marco Fransoni does, and he's an absolute genius at kind of airbrushing stuff and just kind of like making the absolute most out of an airbrush so you can do the fun bits of painting. But you can see that I still kind of maximized that airbrush so I can just enjoy this bit of painting. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with this. I'm going to go and do all of this highlighting with this first cover. I mean, I don't know if you can see from there, but you can see straight away the difference it's making. I'm getting a nice highlight there. It's perfect for the orange, so it's a nice orangey highlight at the moment. And it's I like you too, Turner, as well. Hope you're enjoying TVs at the moment. Sorry. So I'm just doing, you too, Turner. I'm just doing a highlighting for this area. And when I've done all this first highlight, I'm going to just show you how I kind of mix my next ones and go through the highlighting process. It is time consuming, but it's fun. So in terms of actual tips for highlighting, I'll actually talk about that rather than just saying I'm highlighting. What you want to be doing, you don't want too chunky paint, you don't want too thin paint. It needs to be just right, just in the middle. So it is a nice flowing paint that has some good opacity that you can use to highlight. So you kind of just basically need it so you want it to show, you don't want it to be too thin, but you need it also to be fluid. You basically, a really good judge of if your paint is thin enough is if it's flooding at all. So if in any way it's flooding the cracks, it's obviously too thin. If you are painting it and you are finding that it's chunky at all, okay, if it's just basically built up a texture, then it's either too dry or you've got too much on your brush. So what I mean by texture there is when you're kind of drawing back with your brush, if you are finding that it's kind of spotting or it's scraping in any way, then your paint is not thin enough. It is not got enough water or thinner or whatever you want to use in it. I just use water because I am cheap and I can't be bothered buying anything else. But you should be painting in a way where you can just drag and it just basically moves on and you're not feeling like it's spotting at all. You're not feeling like when you're dragging across that paint is starting to leave little gaps, or it just basically feels like you can tell it will feel like you are dragging it, and it is scraping. And if it feels like it is scraping in any way, it should flow, it should not scrape. So if it's scraping, you haven't got enough water. You need to start to just flow it a bit more, or paint, water or paint. I would first try and get a little bit more paint on there, and then I would maybe put a tiny bit of water in to try and fill it and just let it flow. Because obviously if you're just using paint, then it's not going to be it's probably going to dry too quickly and you're gonna get clumps. It's going to be too dry again, so you might need a little bit more water. So that is kind of what you're looking for when you're painting. Now in terms of doing edge highlighting, what you're looking to do is, you can do it any way, it's whatever works in it, but at the end of the day, I have not got left any really nice pointy brushes. I love buying a good pointy brush, but I've recently bought a house, so I can't be spending them all the time at the moment. So at the moment my brushes are a little bit ditched. So you can see that when I'm working on this, what I'm trying to prioritize is holding my brush at an angle which is basically going to go across the bit that I'm edge highlighting. So you can see I'm edge highlighting this, but rather than doing that and trying to just have an absolute precision, I am instead getting my paint and I'm instead going across the edge, so it's kind of moving. I'm basically kind of, when I go down, I'm going to be painting and getting it with the edge of my brush. Still try and keep it your thin end, but you still want the edge. And what you're kind of doing, okay, what's a really good practice to help you is to just basically, you're kind of painting the air. You're painting the air. Don't take too long, otherwise your paint will dry out. But you're kind of painting the air and slightly, almost like a very slow lever, bringing your hand up like this. So you very slowly bringing your piece to the brush. Or you can bring your brush down to it. So you kind of basically, my two arms are braced. I am very kind of solidly, kind of like, I've got a really stable position, and I can just really easily change my increments of my hand up and down and bring it slowly towards the brush. And you can see me kind of like painting. And what will happen is eventually I'll get to the point where I actually then hit it and am edge highlighting. This is a really good method to keep real stable control. So you are not kind of just going, right, I'm going to edge highlight, and it's just going suddenly really, really, really dark. So you're trying to, you can see that, and it's just, you'll build muscle, but you can see me going, and then kind of just doing that by a matter of course, starting at a distance, and then getting closer, and then boom. Now, and that will help you, it's like you're practicing in the air until you get there. And so you're kind of not trying to just get it bang on first time. You can try, and if you miss, then you just go slightly closer, and then eventually you'll hit it. But because you're going so slowly, then you can basically, you're not going to go and have this massive great mark. The more you do it, the more accurate you're going to get. You might get to the point where you can just, you don't have to worry about that so much, and you'll be able to just, some of these you can see I'm still doing it. I don't even notice I'm doing it, to be honest. But you'll, by matter of course, just be able to go look and just do it straight off. But you can build into your muscle memory that practicing stroke of just drawing backwards, trying to do so. Now, there's going to be certain times in which it's going to be simpler for you to draw lines on, just simply draw lines on instead. So like you can see these bits of carapace, it's going to be very hard to do this because they're quite rounded. So if I try and do this, the mark's going to be massive. It's not going to look like an edge highlight. It's going to be like this dirty great mark. So to try and get your edge highlight on that instead, you're going to need to draw a line instead. So this is where you are going to need to draw an edge highlight. In most places, you do not need to do that. You do not need to have that accuracy. You can just hold your brush sideways. But in these situations, you're going to need to draw a line. But again, that's where my method of kind of like slowly going closer will really help you, because you're basically keeping a nice thin brush and then getting closer each time. There we go. And then I'm there. And that will help you, because that line, you are only going to hit it, you're only going to draw it with the very tip of your brush, because you are so slowly working towards it. And it's only going on when it's just touching, which means you're using that very tip of your brush. So like I said, if you do it, the more you do it, the quicker, the more you'll judge straight off how close you are. So the less time that's going to take, less practice strokes you're going to have to do. It's the same thing, it'll get the same result, you'll just do it quicker. But that is how to kind of essentially draw lines. And the more you do it, the more you'll just be, you won't think about doing it across and doing it, you'll just naturally do it. Like, you can see sometimes I'm just going in for draw a line, sometimes I'm doing it sideways just because muscle memory knows that will just be quicker. It'll just be quicker to do that one as a line, it'll be quicker to do that one as side on. You'll just change depending. Okay, so we've pretty much done now that edge highlighting, and hopefully you can see kind of that first little bit, and it's only the first bit of edge highlighting we're going to do next now. And you can see that what we've done there is we've basically kind of like got a first bit of orange. Now look, if we look at that top, it's barely making any difference. If we look at the bottom, it's making loads and loads of difference. And so we're going to have to kind of like layer up our edge highlighting and use a lot of kind of lighter colours to try and basically then make it make sense for the top, and that's what we're going to do for next. Now I'm trying to make a little bit more of a yellowy orange now, a lighter yellowy orange. So I'm trying to move my yellow into it. It was a bit too orange before, so I'm going to get that. I'm going to start getting a little bit of water now, just a tiny bit, just to make that flow a little bit better. Ready to start using that as a highlight. I think that's all right. So I'm going to test that out on my piece, and that whole point is to just basically work into that. So at the point where now when we edge highlight, that will start to stand out more in those raised areas. We're going to try and go all the way up to white, by the way, so we're going to go in increments. Now there's two things you want to do with this highlight. First thing, you don't want to do it everywhere. Okay, so we're going to do it on the front. Now you might think I'm doing just the same thing I did before. I almost am, but But what I'm trying to do every single time I do a edge highlight now, you can see I'm doing exactly the same method that I talked to you about. So I am practicing and hitting, practicing and hitting. My brush is not pinpoint perfect or anything. Need to be less cheap, but so it's not, it's not the most perfect edge highlight I'm ever going to get. But what I'm trying to do is this. First, I am taking my edge highlight from here and not here. So not right there, I'm taking it from about here. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want, I want some of that last edge highlight to show close to where it's just about to go into that gap. So that's the first thing I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure that when I use this edge highlight, I'm doing it for the majority of where that last one went, except for the real bits which kind of go into the shadows. Right, so we're getting to, now you can do this as much as you want, like as much as you enjoy, like you can just keep going at incremental steps. I'm going to do 2 more steps now. I'm going to do a lighter version of this, so going to do my kind of final lightest highlight. That's not going to go on many parts. I'm going to mix it as I'm talking. So I'm going to do lighter version of this. You can see I'm just mixing it right next to it because I've got a little area I can do. So I'm going to try and make it as kind of light as possible, but not white. So I'm going to layer up to that. Now you will see, I'm not going to do it so much on the Carapace, but you will see one thing that I do a lot on these models because it just looks nice, is I do a lot of going right up to white and then a dot of white for reflection. I do a lot more of that on the skin to bring more contrast to the skin, but I do an absolute load of kind of going up to that colour. So going up to a very light colour, I might go even lighter. I mean, you could do this colour, then you can go a lighter colour, then it's up to you, it's just what you can be boxed to do. But basically, yeah, I'm doing a lot of, let's just try and make sure that's in camera, going up to a very, very light colour, and on the skin, basically then using kind of a final little dot of white. So, and you'll see when we do a bit on the skin part, might make these into separate videos at this part, just decides what we want to do. But you can see there now, we're kind of just putting this in. Look how much difference, like just going up in incremental amounts it can make. Right, so I basically use white on tips. So I will try, and you can use it in other bits. So let's say if you've got curved bits, let's have a look here. Like you can see on this model, we've got a lot of white kind of on more glossy. I wanted this skin to seem like it was a bit kind of like slimy. So if you're going to do that, it's going to reflect because it's going to be watery. So you can see we've got dots of reflections where you would have that. In certain other places you've got reflections kind of in cracks. So that's kind of like when we're talking, that's some of the kind of stuff when you're doing non-metallic metal stuff you can do. Like you can do white in cracks because water will collect in cracks, and so you can have it reflecting from those cracks. But I don't want this Carapace ridiculously reflective. So all I'm going to do, and I haven't really, to be honest, done this much on the other models, but I've said I'm going to do it now, so I'm going to do it. I'm just going to get white, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it on tips. So you can see wherever it comes to a tip, I'm just going to whack a tiny bit of white on there. So just there. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do some black stripes. Now, what I'm using is I'm using a matte black paint. So, you use what you want, but I'm using a matte black paint. I'm using some scale 75, not scale 75, that's bad. AK, use some AK black. Now, this is what I plan to do because I looked at a picture of, see if I can put it on, but I looked at some pictures of beetles. And there was this orange and black beetle with kind of like some black pattern on it. So, and I wanted to do some orange. So, and I saw that and I thought, oh yeah, it works well. That's nice. Now, it's actually turned out to be like the easiest bit of freehanded pattern you could ever want to do ever, because you don't have to draw a straight line. You don't have to, you just have to do a vaguely collected line of black, which is just the easiest thing ever. So I will show you how I do it, but honestly, like, it is proper easy to do. I might need to I'll show you as best I can on camera, but it's obviously quite hard to do this when I'm looking from a bit of a weird angle to paint from. So look, basically a pointy brush helps. You get in your black, you can see me thinning that black down. I'm getting my black down there. I'm using a bit of water to thin it down and draw it back, and trying to make sure that it paints well. It's not too clumpy, but I'm also trying to make sure that when I'm doing this, it's not too thin either, because I just want to really just do one pass. When we do this, what we're going to try and do is just, in the same way I've done these kind of things, I just want them in areas, and I'm going to try and keep them as symmetrical as possible. I'm just going to paint them down. I want them to be a bit more chunky at the top, and I want them to thin out at the bottom. But you can see what we're doing is I don't want it to look like a line, because if it looks like a really neat line, it's not going to look organic, and it's harder. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start this line. We're going to start painting down. I'm going to have it, and you just need to kind of think of the flow of a shell. But the thing that's so nice about this, you can see I'm not painting neatly. I'm trying to just do very slight little shakes. There's a lot of forgiveness in this. Like, that's what is very nice about it. So I think it's really accessible, to be honest. In terms of your bit of freehand, it's really accessible, because you can do you can do a mistake, you can have it wobble a little bit. All I'm doing is make a slight curve down to here, and I'm trying to just make it smaller and smaller as it goes down. The hardest bit you're going to have, so you can still see I'm trying to make slight little wobbles and kind of bits coming out as I'm going, so slight little chunks. The hardest bit is that as you get to the bottom, you just want it to look neater. So here is your hard bit, where you just want to practice paint, go down, get your line started, go down, and then you lift up, so your last bit is your thinnest part. I haven't even done that very well. My brush, like I said, I'm going to blame it on my brush. But you can see, a bit larger at the top, goes down, and I'm not going to do anything else to it. I'm just going to keep it as a nice black line. I'm not going to do any highlighting edges or anything like that. I just don't think it needs it. You know, why complicate it? It looks perfectly fine. I'm going to do the same on this side. Try and take it from there. Wobble, wobble, wobble. Trying to just basically paint a nice black line, but just slightly going to the side each time. And as I'm doing it, a few other wobbles, trying to make it look relatively even, turning it round like so. Sometimes going back if I feel like it needs a bit more. Try and keep it as neat as possible. Boom. Now, what I would say when you're doing this, the biggest thing, I mean, luckily it's a very forgiving bit of freehand that isn't that hard to do. You can do this pattern however you want. You might want to do it down the head a bit. I'll do some all over mine. I'll show you how it looks. The big thing you just have to understand is just be careful when you're doing it, that you don't go too much, because if you do, then you've got all your work below it you don't want to ruin. Now, what I will show you is how you can maybe fix it quick. So this is if you make a mistake, what could you do? So you have to be quick on this. Luckily, this is a bit I can ruin. I hope this works, because it might go completely tits up and then I'll look like an idiot. But let's just imagine we're doing this. Boom, 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 boom. We're doing our back line. It's all working absolutely fine. Just going down there. All good. And then I go, ooh, like that. Oh, right. I'm going to quickly get my brush, get loads of water, and I'm going to flood that area. And I'm going to use water. And I'm just going to basically, can you see me just doing that? Bum, 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 bum. And then I'm going to get my brush and I'm going to take all that water away. There we go. Get all that water away. Now, you're not going to end up painting that until it's dry again. But you can see I just did a big bit of black on there. And that's black. You know, black is the darkest thing you're going to paint, and it can ruin things. And what I did immediately when I've made that mistake, straight away, wash your brush completely. Don't go and suddenly whack a load of more black on it, but you wash your brush thoroughly, make sure there's no black on there. You get a load of water, you flood it, and then you take that off. And if you do that, you'll be able to fix it. You'll be able to sort it out. But like I said, you don't really want to be doing that because it's full of risk. But at least it gives you an option. So that's how you need to fix it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to paint the rest of this and I'll show you the carapace. And there you go, that's it finished. So thank you very much for watching. I hope some of it was useful. I promise the next one will be longer. No, shorter. It's going to be shorter, much shorter. I will try and skip through things a little bit more quickly and keep the points a little bit more concise and sharp. The only thing I'd do a little bit more on this is possibly you could do some black lining, as I mentioned probably a little bit earlier in the video. I just haven't done it on these ones. I just didn't think it needed it at the time. It will make it look better, like just going through each of those little crevices and kind of doing some kind of occlusion shadows, but it's just one of those things that it does look better, but it's just a bit more time consuming. I would suggest possibly doing it with a pin wash with oil, or just going in and just painting it properly with black. I might try it one time on one of the other models, but at the moment I'm pretty happy with how the carapace is looking, pretty happy with the highlighting and the colour on it and the stripe. And so next I will try and put together something on the skin for you so you can see how I approach that. Anyways, all the best, see you later.
That brings us to the end of the episode. Hopefully you found something new or useful while listening, and if you did, throwing us a like would be greatly appreciated. If you want to make sure you don't miss any episodes, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click on the bell so you get notifications as soon as the next one drops. It really is the best way to help a small channel like ours. And if you can't wait and you do want early access, we have a Patreon where you can get exclusive access to all our content ahead of time. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Just drop a comment below and we'll get right to you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host Ryan, this has been Turning Point Tactics, and we'll see you next week.